The Blackwood mansion cast its imposing shadow against the December sky, its huge windows reflecting the last remnants of evening light. Lucas Blackwood watched through the glass of his second-floor office as the first snowflakes of that winter fell softly on the impeccably kept garden. His fingers drummed distractedly on the polished surface of his mahogany desk, while his eyes, a deep, tired blue, followed the hypnotic movement of the snow. The silence was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a tangible presence that had settled into the mansion ever since Sarah had left. It had been exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. Not that Lucas was counting, but every morning without her seemed to etch itself into his memory like a new scar. "Daddy?" The soft voice of Emma, his 9-year-old daughter, rang through the room like a distant bell. Lucas turned his leather chair, finding the small figure standing in the doorway of the office. Her light brown hair was tied up in a messy braid, and her green eyes, so similar to Sarah's, carried that melancholy that broke his heart every time. "Yes, Princess." Lucas forced a smile, trying to smooth away the worry lines that had become permanent on his face in recent years. Emma hesitated, her small fingers playing with the hem of the purple sweater she was wearing. "Mrs. Henderson said she needed to talk to you about the school's Christmas performance." Lucas felt his stomach contract. The Christmas performance, another tradition that Sarah loved, and which had now become a painful reminder of her absence. "Sure, I'll call her later." "I'm not going to take part this year," Emma declared abruptly, her voice trembling slightly. "Why not? You've always loved singing in the choir. Mom always helped me practice," she replied, her words laden with a sadness that no child should know. "She made cinnamon cookies and we sang together every night before the show." Lucas rose from his chair, crossing the office in long strides to kneel in front of his daughter. The soft scent of children's shampoo hit him, mingling with a distant memory of Sarah combing that same hair. "Emma, your mother." His voice failed him. How to explain the inexplicable? How to console when his own heart was breaking? "I know, Dad. She's in heaven." Emma recited the words as if they were a memorized lesson, without any real consolation in them. "But sometimes, when I wake up in the morning, for a second, I forget, and then I remember, and it hurts all over again." Lucas pulled his daughter into a tight hug, feeling her hot tears wet his shirt. Her small body shook with restrained sobs, and each tremor was like a dagger in his chest. What kind of father was he, unable to heal his own daughter's pain? Through the office window, the snow continued to fall, covering the outside world in its silent white blanket. Inside the Blackwood mansion, the silence had a different weight. It was made up of unspoken words, unsung songs, laughter that had become an echo. On the opposite wall, a family portrait captured a moment frozen in time. Sarah, radiant in a pale blue dress, her golden hair shining in the summer sun. Emma, then 5, her smile revealing a tiny window between her teeth. And Lucas, with an arm around each of them, his eyes full of a happiness that now seemed to belong to another life. "Do you know what I miss most?" Emma murmured against his chest. "The smell of her perfume. Sometimes I go to your closet and try to find it, but it's not there anymore." Lucas closed his eyes tightly, remembering the day he had put away all of Sarah's things. It had been a few months after the accident, when the pain of seeing her belongings scattered around the house had become unbearable. Now, he wondered if it had been the right decision. "Emma," he began, gently pulling away to look into his daughter's eyes, "your mother loved Christmas more than any other time of the year. She'd be sad to know that you're giving up something you love because you miss her. But it's not the same without her," Emma protested, her voice small and broken. "No, it's not," Lucas agreed, feeling the weight of his own words. "Nothing is the same without her. But maybe we can find a new way to make things special." Emma didn't answer, but her gaze turned to the window, where the snowflakes were dancing their silent waltz. Lucas followed her gaze, feeling a growing restlessness in his chest. Something had to change. He couldn't go on watching his daughter wither like a sunless flower. The distant sound of the heating system echoed through the mansion, a mechanical reminder that life went on, even when it seemed frozen in time. Lucas stood up, his joints protesting after his time kneeling on the hard floor. "How about we order pizza for dinner?" he suggested, in an attempt to bring some normality to the moment. Emma nodded without enthusiasm, turning to leave the office. At the door, she stopped and looked back. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "Do you think Mom would be sad to see how we are now?" The question hit Lucas like a punch in the gut. Sarah had always been the light of the house, the one who kept everything alive and vibrant. What would she think of the silent mausoleum her house had become? "I think she'd like us to find a way to smile again," he finally replied, his voice hoarse with restrained emotion. As he watched Emma disappear down the corridor, Lucas turned his attention to the snow that continued to fall. Christmas was coming, and with it, all the memories and traditions that made the emptiness seem even greater. Something needed to change, and it needed to change soon. He couldn't go on being just a shadow of a father, living a life in black and white when his daughter deserved all the colors in the world. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Lucas remained in his office, the laptop open in front of him, projecting a bluish light onto his tired face. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as an idea began to take shape in his mind. A crazy, possibly terrible idea, but perhaps the only chance of bringing some light back into his daughter's eyes. The clock on the wall struck midnight when he finally started typing, the sound of the keys breaking the sepulchral silence of the Blackwood mansion. The cold morning light found Lucas still in his office, his red eyes fixed on the computer screen, empty coffee cups piled up on the desk, silent witnesses to a sleepless night. On the screen, a draft email was waiting to be sent, its cursor blinking like an anxious heart. Mr. Blackwood, the voice of Martha, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for over a decade, interrupted his thoughts. "Breakfast is served, and Emma is already waiting." Lucas ran his hands over his face, feeling his stubble scratch his palms. "Thanks, Martha. I'll be right down." Before getting up, his eyes ran one last time over the text he had been writing and rewriting all night. Wanted, actress for temporary role during the holidays. Requirements, young appearance, 25-35 years, charismatic personality, experience with children, absolute discretion required, extremely generous compensation. Her finger hesitated over the mouse. It was crazy. Of course it was. Hiring someone to pretend to be, what exactly? A family friend? A new mother figure? The ethical implications tormented him, but the memory of Emma's blank stare weighed more heavily on his conscience. With a quick click, before he could change his mind, he sent the email to several talent agencies on the East Coast. In the dining room, Emma poked uninterestedly at her waffles with strawberries, her favorite breakfast that now seemed like just another failed attempt at normalcy. Martha circulated around the kitchen with her usual efficiency, casting worried glances at father and daughter. "How did you sleep, princess?" Lucas tried, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "I had a dream about Mom again," Emma replied, her voice small. "She was decorating the Christmas tree, just like that year when it snowed a lot." Lucas swallowed, remembering vividly the Christmas in question. Sarah had insisted on decorating the tree even with the snowstorm outside, saying that it was even more magical that way. She was right, as always. "Mr. Blackwood," Martha interrupted gently, "don't forget the meeting with the investors at 10, the reality of the outside world, the one that kept spinning despite his pain, brought him back to the present." "Of course. Thank you, Martha." "Emma, dear, Mrs. Henderson will pick you up for school in 15 minutes. The day dragged on between meetings and phone calls, but Lucas's mind kept returning to the email he had sent in the morning. At around 3 in the afternoon, his cell phone vibrated with a notification. One of the agencies had replied, setting up a meeting for the following day. Precision Talent Agency. The name flashed across the screen like a warning. Lucas booked the appointment, feeling his stomach churn with a mixture of anxiety and guilt. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Lucas found himself in the mansion's old music room. The black grand piano, covered in a fine layer of dust, had remained closed since Sarah's death. She used to play it every night, filling the house with melodies that made everything seem more alive, more colorful. "Am I doing the right thing, Sarah?" he whispered into the silence. "Or is this just another way of denying that you're gone?" The phone vibrated again in his pocket. More answers from the agencies, more possibilities, more doubts. Lucas sat down on the piano bench, his fingers tracing the covered keys. The next morning, the Precision Talent Agency office greeted him with a clinical efficiency that made him even more nervous. Rebecca Morrison, the agent he had made an appointment with, was a middle-aged woman with piercing eyes and a professional smile. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, flipping through some pages on her desk, "I must say that your request is unusual." "I know how it must seem," Lucas hastened to explain. But it's nothing inappropriate. My daughter, Mr. Blackwood, Rebecca interrupted him gently. You don't need to justify yourself. We deal with all kinds of special requests. In fact, I already have a few candidates in mind who could be perfect for the role. She slid 3 folders across the table. Lucas opened the first one, finding the profile of an actress called Charlotte Miller. Pretty, but not what he was looking for. The second folder revealed a Rachel Anderson. Again, not it. Then he opened the third folder. Layla Richardson, he read aloud. The photo showed a young woman with honey-colored eyes and a smile that seemed genuinely warm. There was something in her expression that made him pause. Ah, Layla, Rebecca smiled. One of our best. She has a degree in theater and specializes in interactive performances. She has particular experience with children. She worked for years in an art therapy program for bereaved young people. Lucas felt his heart racing. Is she available for an interview? By coincidence, she's in the building now. I can call her if you like. 15 minutes later, Layla Richardson entered the room. In person, her presence was even more striking than in the photo. She was dressed simply, jeans, a beige sweater and brown boots, but there was a natural elegance to her movements. Mr. Blackwood, she greeted him with a firm handshake. Rebecca briefly explained your situation to me. Please call me Lucas, he replied, noticing how she maintained eye contact in a way that conveyed both confidence and compassion. Over the next hour, they talked about expectations, boundaries, and, above all, Emma. Layla asked insightful questions about the girl's personality, her likes, her fears. At no point did she show judgment about the unusual nature of the job. Why would you accept something like this? Lucas finally asked, the question that had been eating at him from the start. Layla paused, considering her answer. Because sometimes, Mr. Blackwood, Lucas, people need a bridge to get through difficult times. I'm not here to replace anyone, just to help create memories that can make the present a little more bearable. When Lucas left the office that afternoon, he had a signed contract in his pocket and a giddy feeling in his stomach. In 3 days, Layla Richardson would enter their lives, and nothing would be the same. On his way home, he stopped at the cemetery. Sarah's grave was covered in a thin layer of snow. The flowers she had left the week before already wilted by the cold. Forgive me, he whispered, touching the cold headstone. But I have to try something. For Emma. For us. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it snowflakes and Lucas's last doubts. The decision had been made. Now all they had to do was wait to see if it would be the salvation they so desperately needed or the biggest mistake of their lives. The morning that Layla arrived at the Blackwood mansion dawned with a peculiar clarity. The snow that had fallen during the night had transformed the garden into a fairy tale setting, and for the first time in a long time, Lucas woke up before the alarm clock, his stomach churning with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Martha, he called to the housekeeper as he came downstairs, still adjusting his tie. Is everything ready for Miss Richardson's arrival? Martha nodded, her eyes revealing a maternal concern she couldn't hide. The guest room in the east wing is ready, sir. Although I still think we should have told Emma about— No, Lucas interrupted her gently. Let's do as we agreed. Layla will be introduced as an old family friend who is spending the holidays with us. It's better that way. The sound of small footsteps coming down the stairs interrupted the conversation. Emma appeared wearing her school uniform and carrying her purple backpack. Her hair, as always since Sarah had left, was messily arranged in an attempt at a ponytail. Come here, dear, Martha called out, already reaching for a hairbrush she kept in the kitchen drawer. As she tidied Emma's hair, she exchanged a meaningful glance with Lucas. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Lucas, who had decided to work from home that morning, felt his heart leap. Through the security system, he saw Layla standing at the door, holding a small suitcase and a handbag. She was wearing a red coat that contrasted beautifully with the surrounding snow. Good morning, she smiled as he opened the door, her honey-colored eyes conveying a calm he envied. I hope I'm not too early. No, it's perfect, Lucas replied, stepping aside for her to enter. Please, come in. Martha will show you to your room and then we can talk about the last details before Emma comes home from school. Layla entered, and Lucas immediately noticed how she observed every detail of the house with attentive but discreet eyes. His gaze stopped for a moment on the closed piano, and something in his expression subtly changed. Do you play? Lucas asked, following her gaze. Yes, she replied softly. Ever since I was a child, the piano has always been my refuge. Before they could continue the conversation, Martha appeared to guide Layla to her room. Lucas watched them climb the stairs, wondering for the 1,000th time if he was doing the right thing. The next few hours were spent discussing the details of the plan. Layla showed an extraordinary understanding of the situation, asking pertinent questions and offering sensible suggestions on how to approach Emma. The key is not to force anything, she explained, sitting in the library with a cup of tea in her hands. Children are incredibly intuitive. Emma needs to feel safe to approach in her own time. At 3 in the afternoon, the sound of Mrs. Henderson's car announced Emma's arrival from school. Lucas felt his heart racing again. "Are you ready?" he asked Layla, who had swapped her red coat for a light blue sweater that made her look even more welcoming. "I am," she replied with a reassuring smile. "And you?" Before she could answer, the front door opened and Emma walked in, shaking the snow off her boots. Her eyes widened at the sight of the stranger sitting in the living room. "Emma," Lucas called out, keeping his voice casual, "I want you to meet a very special friend. This is Layla. She's going to be spending Christmas with us." Layla didn't move immediately, giving Emma space to process the information. When she spoke, her voice was silky smooth. "Hello, Emma. Your father has told me a lot about you." Emma looked at her father, then at Layla, clearly confused. "Your daddy's friend?" "Yes," Layla replied naturally. "We've known each other for a long time, but I've been living abroad. When your father mentioned that you were in need of a little extra Christmas cheer, I thought I might be able to help. You know, I make the best cinnamon cookies in the world." Emma's eyes widened even more at the mention of cookies, and something flickered in her gaze, a mixture of memory and interest. "Cinnamon cookies," she repeated softly. "Mm-hmm," Layla agreed, leaning forward slightly as if sharing a secret. "With sugar icing and everything. Do you want to help me make some? I promise I can teach you all my special tricks." For a moment, no one moved. Lucas held his breath, watching his daughter consider the offer. Then something magical happened. Emma gave a small smile, the first genuine smile Lucas had seen in weeks. "Can I, Dad?" she asked, turning to Lucas with a glint of expectation in her eyes. "Of course, Princess," he replied, his voice tinged with restrained emotion. "Just do your homework first, okay?" "I'll do it right now," Emma declared, running up the stairs with an energy she hadn't shown for a long time. As soon as she disappeared, Lucas let out a shaky sigh. "That was incredible," Layla smiled gently. "It's only the beginning, Lucas. The important thing is not to rush. Emma will guide us. We just need to watch out for her signals." Over the next few hours, Lucas watched in amazement as Layla and Emma prepared cookies in the kitchen. The sound of his daughter's laughter echoed through the house, filling the empty spaces with something he had forgotten existed: hope. Martha, discreetly tidying up the dining room, stopped for a moment to watch the scene through the kitchen door. Her eyes met Lucas's, and she gave a small smile of approval. When night fell and the scent of cinnamon filled the whole house, Lucas found Emma sitting on the piano bench, gazing thoughtfully at the covered keys. "Daddy," she called softly, "is Layla really staying for Christmas?" "Yes, dear. Does that make you happy?" Emma was silent for a moment, her fingers lightly tracing the piano keys. "She makes cookies just like Mom used to," she finally said. "Not exactly the same, but it's good anyway." Lucas felt tears forming in his eyes. Through the kitchen door, he could see Layla cleaning up the afternoon's mess, humming softly to herself. For a brief moment, the Blackwood mansion no longer seemed like a mausoleum of memories, but a place where new beginnings were possible. "Yes, Princess," he whispered, kissing the top of his daughter's head. "It's good all the same." The attic of the Blackwood mansion held stories in dusty boxes. Lucas climbed the creaky stairs that Saturday morning, driven by an impulse he couldn't explain. The space was exactly as Sarah had left it, organized chaos, as she used to call it. His fingers found an old shoebox, decorated with faded stickers. Inside, dozens of Polaroid photographs told the story of her life with Sarah. The first photo showed her smiling in front of the university where they met, her golden hair fluttering in the autumn wind. "Mr. Blackwood," Layla's voice surprised him. She was standing in the attic doorway, hesitating. "Martha mentioned you were up here. Emma's asking if she can go to the park, since the snow has abated." Lucas looked at the photo in his hands, then at Layla. "Sure, it would be nice for her to get out for a bit. Would you mind accompanying her? I need a moment here. I can stay, if you need to talk." Layla offered softly, taking a few steps into the attic. Her eyes scanned the boxes with respect, as if she understood the weight of the memories stored there. Lucas hesitated, then held out the photo he was holding. This was the day we met. Sarah was doing art history. I was in administration. She literally bumped into me while photographing the campus. Layla took the photo carefully, a small smile forming on her lips. She looked so full of life. She was, Lucas replied, his voice breaking. I always carried around this old Polaroid camera. She said that digital photos had no soul. Diving deeper into the box, Lucas found another photo. This one showed a pregnant Sarah, sitting at the piano, her hands resting on her protruding belly. She played for Emma every night during her pregnancy, he explained, running his finger over the image. Chopin, mostly. She said our daughter would be an artist. And is she? Layla asked softly. Emma? Yes, in a way. She draws constantly, although she stopped showing her drawings after Sarah left. The silence that followed was filled only by the distant sound of Emma playing downstairs. Lucas continued rummaging through the box, each photo bringing up an avalanche of memories. This was our last Christmas together, he said, showing a picture of the three of them decorating the tree. Sarah was wearing a ridiculously oversized red sweater. Emma had glitter on her nose. And he was smiling in a way he no longer recognized. You look so happy, Layla commented, sitting down on an old trunk nearby. We were? But you know what's hardest? Lucas paused, unswallowing. I can't remember the sound of her laugh. I have hundreds of photos, but I can't hear her voice in my mind anymore. Layla was silent for a moment, then spoke gently. Maybe it's because you've kept those memories so deeply, trying to protect yourself from the pain. How did you? Lucas began, surprised at the insightfulness of the comment. I've lost someone too, she revealed, her voice barely above a whisper. Not in the same way, but I understand the need to bury certain memories in order to move on. Before Lucas could reply, the sound of hurried footsteps on the stairs interrupted the moment. Dad? Layla? Emma appeared in the attic doorway, stopping abruptly at the sight of the scattered photos. What are you doing? Lucas quickly tried to put the pictures away, but Emma had already approached, her eyes fixed on the images. It's Mom, she said softly, picking up the photo from last Christmas. I remember that day. She burned the cookies because we were dancing in the kitchen. To Lucas's surprise, there was no sadness in Emma's voice, just a soft, almost sweet nostalgia. She was terrible in the kitchen. Lucas laughed softly, the memories flowing more easily now. But she danced like nobody's business. Can I have that photo? Emma asked hesitantly. Lucas exchanged a quick glance with Layla, who nodded discreetly. Of course, Princess. Actually, he paused, an idea forming. How about we choose some photos to make a new album? We can put it on your bedside table. Emma's eyes lit up. Can we put the one from the picnic in too? When Mom made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. For the next hour, the three of them sat on the dusty attic floor, sorting through photos and sharing stories. Layla listened attentively, asking occasional questions that allowed Emma and Lucas to expand on their memories. Look at this one, Emma exclaimed, holding up a photo where Sarah was covered in paint. That's when we painted my room purple, and she insisted on doing it herself, without professional help, Lucas added, shaking his head with a smile. We all ended up looking like purple Smurfs. Layla laughed, and the sound of her laughter blended naturally with the memories that filled the air. It was different from Sarah's laugh, softer, more restrained, but somehow it didn't diminish the presence of the memories. On the contrary, it seemed to create a safe space where they could exist without hurting so much. When they finally came down from the attic, it was already dusk. Emma was carefully carrying her new photo album, and Lucas felt lighter at heart than he had in months. Do you still want to go to the park? Layla asked Emma. Tomorrow, the girl replied, hugging the album. Today I want to show these photos to Martha. She'll love seeing her mommy again. As Emma ran off to find the housekeeper, Lucas turned to Layla. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For not trying to erase Sarah. For helping us find a way to keep her present without it hurting so much. Layla smiled softly. Some people are too big to be forgotten, Lucas. Sometimes we just need to learn a new way to remember them. That night, for the first time in 2 years, Lucas dreamt of Sarah, but instead of the usual sense of loss when he woke up, he felt a strange peace. The memories were there, preserved like the Polaroids his wife loved so much, a little faded perhaps, but still full of life and love. The first week of December brought an almost natural routine to the Blackwood mansion. Mornings began with the aroma of coffee and toast, Emma's laughter echoing through the kitchen as Layla invented amusing ways of arranging the fruit on her plate. However, on that particular morning, something was different. Lucas first noticed Layla's eyes, normally warm and bright. Today they seemed distant, almost opaque. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, barely touching the breakfast Martha had prepared. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly, taking advantage of Emma's distraction with her cereal. Layla forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, I just didn't sleep very well." Before Lucas could insist, Layla's cell phone vibrated. She glanced quickly at the screen and her expression changed. Something between pain and panic crossed her face before she could pull herself together. "Excuse me," she muttered, abruptly getting up from the table. Lucas watched her hurry up the stairs, his hands trembling slightly. Emma, sensing the change in atmosphere, looked questioningly at her father. "Is Layla ill?" "No, princess, she just needs a moment." Later, after taking Emma to school, Lucas found Layla in the winter garden. She was sitting on one of the wicker benches, staring at a photo on her cell phone. When he noticed her presence, he quickly blocked the screen. "Sorry about breakfast," she began, but Lucas gently interrupted her. "Layla, you've been amazing with Emma, turning our house into something alive again, but it's clear that something is bothering you today." She took a deep breath, her fingers playing nervously with the edge of her sweater. "Today, 3 years ago today, 3 years, since I lost my son." The silence that followed was as heavy as the snow that was beginning to fall outside. Lucas slowly sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance. "His name was Nathan," Layla continued, her voice trembling slightly. "He was 5 years old. He was the kind of kid who made friends with everyone. He had this absolutely adorable crooked smile." She unlocked her phone, showing the photo she was looking at. A boy with light brown hair was smiling at the camera, his honey-colored eyes identical to his mother's. "Was it a car accident?" Lucas asked softly, recognizing the pain in his eyes. Layla shook her head. "Leukemia. We fought for 2 years. He was so strong, you know. Even in the worst days of chemotherapy, he still tried to make me laugh. He said he was going to be a magician when he grew up, because only magicians could make people smile even when they were sad." A tear escaped, sliding silently down her cheek. "That's why I started working with therapeutic theater for grieving children. It was my way of keeping alive the magic that Nathan believed in. And that's why you agreed to come here," Lucas added, finally understanding. "Yes, when I read about Emma, about how she was losing her joy, it reminded me so much of Nathan. He loved Christmas too. We used to have competitions to see who could make the most crooked snowman." Lucas hesitated for a moment before asking, "Why didn't you tell us before?" Layla wiped away the tears with the back of her hand. "Because I'm not here to share my pain. I'm here to help Emma deal with hers. But today is always difficult. You don't have to carry it alone," Lucas said softly. "Not here." Just then, Martha appeared in the doorway to the winter garden. "Mr. Blackwood, Emma's school is calling." Lucas stood up worriedly, but Layla stopped him. "Let me go. I need to occupy myself today. And Emma reminds me that there's still joy in the world." When Layla returned with Emma a few hours later, the girl was pale and quiet. "What happened?" Lucas asked worriedly. "Some children were making fun of her for not having a mother to help with the Christmas performance," Layla explained quietly. "But we had a chat on the way home." Emma approached her father, her eyes red but determined. "Layla told me about Nathan," she said, "about how he's in heaven too, just like Mom." Lucas looked surprised at Layla, who gave a small, sad smile. "She asked me if it hurts less with time," Layla explained. "I said that it doesn't hurt less, but we learn to carry the pain in a different way, and that sometimes, when we meet people who understand our pain, it becomes a little easier to carry." Emma hugged Layla impulsively. "Can we make a crooked snowman today? For Nathan?" Layla swallowed, her hands trembling slightly as she returned the hug. "Of course we can, darling." During the afternoon, the three of them built snowmen in the garden. Emma's had a crooked carrot nose, Lucas's was definitely leaning to one side, and Layla's had a particularly wide smile drawn with pebbles. "Nathan would have loved that," she whispered. more to herself than to the others. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Lucas found Layla in the library, staring at the stars through the window. "Thank you for sharing Nathan with us today," he said softly. "You know what's funny?" she replied, without looking away from the sky. "For the first time in 3 years, I managed to get through this day without feeling completely shattered. Because you weren't alone. Because today, for the first time, I felt that his pain had a purpose. That maybe I can use what I learned from Nathan to help Emma not get lost in her own pain." Lucas watched her profile against the window, seeing not just the actress he had hired, but a woman who, like him, carried deep scars and still chose to move on. "You are," he said simply, "helping, I mean, more than you can imagine." A solitary snowflake landed on the window, slowly melting against the glass. Outside, 3 crooked snowmen stood guard under the stars, silent witnesses that even on the darkest nights, you can still find a little magic. The second week of December brought a different energy to the Blackwood mansion. Dozens of boxes of Christmas decorations, which had been stored in the basement for 2 years, now filled the living room. The scent of hot chocolate and freshly baked cookies filled the air as Emma bounced excitedly among the boxes. "Look, Dad!" she exclaimed, holding up a crystal angel. It was Mom's favorite. Lucas took the delicate ornament, remembering how Sarah insisted on putting it at the top of the tree every year. "Yes, it was." He smiled softly. "She said it protected our family." Layla, who was methodically organizing the Christmas lights, watched the interaction with a discreet smile. Since sharing Nathan's story, something had subtly changed in the dynamic of the house. The invisible walls that separated past and present seemed less rigid now. "Where are we putting the tree this year?" Emma asked, her eyes shining with anticipation. "How about by the piano?" Layla suggested. "That way we can have music while we decorate." Lucas and Emma exchanged a look. The piano had remained closed since Sarah's death, a silent relic of happier times. Would you play for us?" Emma asked hesitantly. Layla stopped what she was doing, realizing the weight of the moment. "Only if you want to. And maybe you could help me choose the songs." The delivery of the tree took place in the early afternoon. It was a majestic pine tree that reached almost to the ceiling of the room. Martha supervised its installation with her usual efficiency, but Lucas noticed that even she seemed more excited than usual. "Perfect," Layla declared when the tree was finally in place. "Now how about some music while we decorate?" She sat down at the piano, lifting the lid reverently. Her fingers slid smoothly across the keys, producing the first notes of Silent Night. The melody flowed through the room like crystal-clear water, filling the empty spaces with something other than music. It was as if the air itself was vibrating with memories and possibilities. Emma approached the piano, mesmerized. "Mom used to play that song," she whispered. "I know," Layla replied softly. "Your father told me. Would you like to try playing it with me?" The girl hesitated for a moment, then climbed onto the stool next to Layla. With infinite patience, Layla began to teach her the basic notes of the melody. Lucas watched the scene, feeling something strange in his chest. Not pain, not exactly. It was more like hope. The sound of the piano, which he had dreaded hearing again, didn't hurt like he had expected. Instead, it seemed to be filling a void he hadn't even known existed. The afternoon passed at its own pace, marked by music, laughter, and occasional moments of contemplative silence. Each hanging ornament carried with it a story, a memory that could now be shared without the weight of loss being overwhelming. "This one," Lucas said, holding up a small hand-painted glass ball, "Emma made in her first year at school." "It's all crooked," Emma laughed, picking up the ornament. "But Mom always said it was the prettiest thing on the tree." "And it was," Layla smiled, stopping playing for a moment. "Sometimes the most special things are those that aren't perfect." As dusk began to fall, the tree was almost completely decorated. Layla had switched to more cheerful tunes, and Emma danced around the room, hanging the last ornaments. "There's just one thing left," Lucas said, picking up the crystal angel. "Can I put it on?" Emma asked. Lucas lifted her into his arms, allowing her to reach the top of the tree. The crystal angel caught the late afternoon light, sending little dancing rainbows across the room. "Perfect," Layla declared, playing the final chords of Joy to the World. Martha appeared with a tray of hot chocolate and cookies, and the 4 of them sat down to admire her work. The tree glowed softly, its lights reflecting in the darkened windows. "You know what?" Emma said thoughtfully, blowing on her hot chocolate. "I think Mom would like to see the tree like this. And Nathan too." Layla swallowed, her hands gripping the cup tightly. Lucas noticed and gently touched her shoulder in a gesture of understanding. "Yes," she finally replied, her voice soft but firm. "I think they'd like that very much." That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Lucas found Layla still sitting at the piano, softly playing a melody he didn't recognize. "It's beautiful," he commented. "What is it?" "A composition that Nathan and I used to come up with together," she replied, without stopping playing. "We never managed to finish it." Maybe you don't have to finish it," Lucas suggested gently. "Some songs are beautiful precisely because they're unfinished." Layla smiled, her hands finally stopping on the keys. "Like some stories, aren't they?" Outside, the snow began to fall again, dancing softly in the light of the Christmas decorations. Inside the Blackwood mansion, the sound of the piano echoed softly through the corridors, no longer like a ghost from the past, but like a promise that sometimes endings are just new beginnings in disguise. The third week of December arrived with a storm. The wind howled against the windows of the Blackwood mansion, and dark clouds made the day almost as gloomy as the night. It was the kind of morning that made people want to stay indoors, wrapped up in warm blankets. Lucas found Emma in the kitchen earlier than usual, still in her pajamas, absent-mindedly stirring her cereal. Something in her expression alerted him that something was wrong. "What's up, princess?" Emma was slow to reply, her eyes fixed on the bowl. "Jessica texted me last night." Lucas sat down next to her, recognizing the name of Emma's best friend from school. "And what did she say?" "She saw a photo I posted with Layla on Instagram. She said that—" Emma hesitated, her voice trembling slightly. "She said it's weird that I'm so happy when Mom's barely 2 years gone." Lucas's heart squeezed. Before he could reply, he heard footsteps on the stairs. Layla was coming down, wearing her favorite sweater and carrying sheet music. She stopped as she noticed the tense atmosphere in the kitchen. "Did something happen?" Emma stood up abruptly, dropping the spoon that clinked loudly against the floor. "You're not my mother," she shouted suddenly, tears starting to stream down her face. "You never will be." Layla stood paralyzed, the sheet music slipping from her hands and scattering across the floor like autumn leaves. The silence that followed was deafening. "Emma," Lucas began, but his daughter was already running up the stairs. The sound of a slamming door echoed through the house. Layla slowly bent down to pick up the sheet music, her hands shaking slightly. I should go." "No," Lucas said firmly, helping her pick up the papers. "This isn't about you. It's about guilt. Emma is feeling guilty about being happy. Maybe I've crossed some boundaries," Layla whispered. "Maybe I'm trying to fill a space that isn't mine to fill." Lucas watched as she methodically organized the sheet music. A habit he had noticed was her coping mechanism when she was upset. "You know what Sarah used to say?" he said softly. "That the heart is like a house. There's always room for more love, as long as you keep the windows open." Layla finally looked up at him, her honey-colored eyes shining with restrained tears. "What if I'm hurting more than helping?" Before Lucas could answer, Martha entered the kitchen, her normally serene face marked by concern. "Mr. Blackwood, Emma's in the music room. She's playing the piano." The three of them exchanged surprised glances before quietly going upstairs. The sound of the piano became clearer with every step, the hesitant, imperfect notes of Silent Night, the song Layla had taught Emma. They stopped at the door to the music room. Emma was sitting at the piano, her small hands moving awkwardly over the keys, silent tears streaming down her face. "Mom used to play this," she said without turning around, her voice breaking. "Every Christmas, and I was afraid I'd forget what it was like." Layla stepped forward, hesitantly. "Emma, darling." "But when you played," Emma continued, still focused on the keys, "it was different. Not like Mom, but beautiful too. And I felt happy. And then I felt terrible for being happy." Lucas felt his own heart break at the sight of his daughter's pain, not just at the loss of Sarah, but at the guilt of beginning to find joy again. Layla approached the piano slowly, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Can I tell you a secret?" she asked softly. "Sometimes, when I play certain songs, I think of Nathan, and I smile, even though I miss him, because longing and happiness can exist together in our hearts." Emma finally looked at her, her green eyes shining with tears. How? Like the sky during a storm? Layla replied, taking a seat next to her on the piano bench. Even when it's dark and rainy, the sun is still up there, shining. Sometimes we can't see it, but it never ceases to exist. Emma considered this for a moment, her fingers still resting on the keys. Do you think Mom would be mad that I'm happy sometimes? No, Lucas interjected, moving closer to the piano. Your mom would only be mad if you stopped smiling forever. Slowly, like the sun rising after the storm, a small smile appeared on Emma's face. Can I try playing again? With you? She asked Layla. The first notes of Silent Night filled the air again, this time played by four hands, imperfect, hesitant, but somehow more meaningful because of it. Outside, the storm was beginning to subside, and the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, creating a rainbow that arched over the Blackwood mansion like a silent promise that, even on the darkest days, there is still light. The snow was falling silently outside the Blackwood mansion when the first sign that something was wrong appeared. It was an ordinary Thursday, and Lucas was in his study when he heard the sound of hurried footsteps coming up the stairs. Mr. Blackwood, Martha's voice carried an unusual urgency. The school called. Emma had an incident. Lucas stood up immediately, his heart racing. What kind of incident? Apparently, there was an argument during rehearsals for the Christmas performance. The principal asked for your immediate presence. When Lucas arrived at the school, he found Emma sitting in the principal's office, her eyes red and swollen. Jessica, her best friend, was sitting on the other side of the room, also crying. Mr. Blackwood, Principal Henderson began, her tone grave. There was a situation during rehearsal today. The girls had a rather serious disagreement. She's lying to everyone, Jessica suddenly exploded, pretending she has a new mother. I've seen the photos on Instagram, the stories she tells. It's all lies. Lucas's blood ran cold. Emma slumped in her chair, sobbing. It's not a lie, Emma protested weakly. Layla is. Yes, she is, Jessica interrupted. My mother researched her. She's an actress. Your father is paying her to pretend. The silence that followed was deafening. Principal Henderson looked at Lucas with a mixture of shock and disapproval. Mr. Blackwood, she began carefully. Perhaps we should talk in private. The drive home was made in absolute silence. Emma kept her face turned towards the window, her silent tears reflecting the light of the winter afternoon. When they arrived at the mansion, Layla was waiting for them at the entrance, her face marked by concern. Martha told me there was a problem at school. It's all. Why didn't you tell me? Emma interrupted her, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. Why didn't you tell me it was all a lie? Layla paled, her eyes meeting Lucas's in a silent plea for help. Emma, darling, she began, taking a step towards the girl. Don't touch me, Emma shouted, backing away. You're just like those Disney princesses at the mall, all fake. And you, she turned to Lucas. How could you do this to me? How could you lie like that? Lucas felt as if every word was a stab in his chest. Emma, I just wanted what? Make a fool of me. Make me believe I could have a family again. The tears now flowed freely down Emma's face. I trusted you. Both of us. Before anyone could reply, Emma ran up the stairs. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the house like a gunshot. Layla dropped onto the sofa, her hands shaking. This is my fault. I should have insisted on telling the truth from the start. No, Lucas said, running his hands over his face in frustration. It's my fault. I'm the one who created this whole situation. I thought I could fix everything with a well-intentioned lie. Martha appeared silently with a tray of tea. If I may say so, she began hesitantly. Perhaps the problem isn't the lie itself, but what it represents. What do you mean? Lucas asked. Emma isn't just hurt by the lie. She's hurt because she allowed herself to love again. She allowed herself to be happy. And now she feels as if it was all fake too. The silence that followed was interrupted only by the distant sound of Emma's sobs upstairs. What do we do now? Layla asked softly. Lucas looked at the stairs, then at the silent piano, at the Christmas decorations that now seemed to mock them with their cheerful glow. Now, he replied in a tired voice, now we need to find a way to show her that not all love needs to be explained to be true. The snow continued to fall outside, covering the world in its white blanket. as if trying to hide all the cracks and imperfections beneath its immaculate surface. But inside the Blackwood mansion, the cracks were too exposed to ignore, and no amount of snow could cover them. The Blackwood mansion dawned in absolute silence, the kind of silence that weighs you down, that suffocates you, that speaks louder than any scream. Emma hadn't left her room since the previous afternoon, refusing to open the door even for Martha. Lucas was in his office, staring at the cold cup of coffee on his desk, when Layla knocked softly on the door. "May I come in?" He nodded silently. Layla seemed to have slept as little as he had. Her honey-colored eyes were marked by deep, dark circles, and her usual sweater had been replaced by a simple black blouse. "I've packed," she said quietly. "I think I'd better go." Layla. "No, Lucas. We need to be honest. This was a mistake from the start. We tried to build something beautiful on a foundation of lies. And now," she paused, swallowing. "Now everything is in pieces." A noise from upstairs interrupted them, the sound of breaking glass. Lucas got up immediately, running towards Emma's room, with Layla right behind. The bedroom door was finally open. Emma stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by shards of glass, the remains of the picture frame she kept next to her bed, with the last photo she had taken with Sarah. "Emma!" Lucas moved to enter, but his daughter held up her hand, stopping him. "Don't come any closer," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. I don't want anyone near me anymore. Ever again, darling." Layla tried, her voice shaking. "I know you're hurt." "You don't know anything," Emma screamed, fresh tears streaming down her face. "You pretended all this time. You pretended to care. You pretended to want to be my... No," Layla interrupted firmly. "That was never pretending. The contract, yes. The initial story, yes. But every moment we spent together, every laugh, every song on the piano, it was all real." Emma shook her head violently. "How can I believe you now?" "Because," Layla stepped forward, ignoring the shards of glass, "because I too know what it's like to lose someone you love. Remember when I told you about Nathan? That was true. Every word." Emma hesitated, her eyes meeting Layla's. "But you're an actress. How can I tell when you're acting and when you're being truthful?" "Because some things can't be acted, Emma," Lucas interjected softly. "The way your eyes sparkle when you smile, the way your nose wrinkles when you're concentrating on the piano, these are things that no one can fake." Emma sobbed, "I just wanted things to go back to the way they were before, with Mommy here." "I know, Princess." Lucas approached carefully, avoiding the shards. "And it was my mistake to try and force something different. But you know what? Sometimes life gives us unexpected gifts, gifts we didn't ask for, but which turn out to be exactly what we needed." Layla bent down, starting to pick up the shards of glass. "Emma, I never wanted to take your mother's place, no one could. But maybe we can build something new. Something different, but just as special." Emma looked at the photo in her hands, now free of the broken glass, but still intact. Sarah was smiling back at her, her green eyes identical to her daughter's shining with love. "Mom always said," Emma murmured, "that love is like a puzzle. Sometimes some pieces get lost, but we can find new ones that fit together in a different way." Lucas felt his heart squeeze. It was exactly the kind of thing Sarah would say. She was right. Layla smiled softly. As always, Emma finally raised her eyes, looking first at her father, then at Layla. "I'm still angry," she said honestly, but I don't want you to leave either." Layla let out a shaky sigh. "Then I won't. I'll stay for as long as you want, being exactly who I am. No lies, no pretenses. Just Layla." "And who is Layla?" Emma asked, her voice small but curious. "Someone who loves music, who makes crooked cookies, who misses her son every day, and who unwittingly found a new family when she least expected it." The first rays of the morning sun finally broke through the bedroom window, illuminating the shards of glass on the floor. In the light, they no longer looked like debris, but little diamonds, sparkling with all the colors of the rainbow. Martha appeared in the doorway with a broom and dustpan. "Shall we clean up this mess?" she asked gently. As they picked up the pieces together, Lucas realized that sometimes something needs to be completely broken before it can be rebuilt in a new, stronger form. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. Lucas woke up before the sun rose, his heart heavy with the decision he had made during the sleepless night. He dressed quietly, picked up his car keys, and went downstairs, trying not to make a sound. "Are you going to the cemetery?" Layla's voice surprised him. She was sitting in the living room, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. "Yes," he replied, adjusting his jacket. I need to talk to her. Would you like some company?" Lucas hesitated. In 2 years, he had never allowed anyone to accompany him on his visits to Sarah's grave. It was his private moment, his solitary ritual. "Actually," he said slowly, "I think so." The cemetery was covered in a thin layer of immaculate snow. Their footsteps left deep marks as they walked between the headstones. Sarah's grave was simple but elegant, white marble with gold lettering. Sarah Elizabeth Blackwood, beloved wife, mother and eternal light. Music never dies, it just changes its tune. Lucas knelt down in the snow, not caring about the cold seeping through his pants. Layla remained a few steps behind, giving him space. "Hi, love," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Sorry I didn't come sooner. Things have been complicated." The silence of the cemetery was absolute, broken only by the occasional song of a distant bird. "I ruined everything, Sarah," he continued, tears beginning to form in his eyes. "I tried to fix our family with lies. I tried to fill your space with illusions. And now," his voice faltered, "and now Emma is suffering even more," he sobbed. "She needed honesty, and I gave her a false fairy tale. What kind of father does that?" Layla approached him silently, putting a hand on his shoulder. "A father who was trying to do the best he could," she said softly. "A father who was so lost in his own pain that he forgot that sometimes the hard way is the honest way." Lucas touched the golden letters on the headstone, tracing Sarah's name with his fingers. "She always knew what to do. She always had the right words, the right gesture. I feel so lost without her." "You're not lost." Layla knelt beside him in the snow. "You're just learning to navigate a different path. Sarah would love you," Lucas said suddenly, a small smile appearing between his tears. "Your honesty, your music, your way with Emma. She'd see through all this mess I've created and find the truth behind it." "And what's the truth?" "That sometimes love comes in unexpected forms. That family isn't just blood or papers, but shared moments and hearts that choose each other." A ray of sunshine broke through the clouds, making the snow sparkle like diamonds around them. "Sarah," Lucas continued, his voice firmer now, "I promise I'll do better. I'm going to be more honest. With Emma, with myself, with everyone. I won't try to hide the pain anymore or pretend it doesn't exist, but I'm also not going to let it stop us from living, from loving, from moving on." Layla took out a small bouquet of white lilies from inside her coat, Sarah's favorite flowers, as Lucas had once mentioned. "May I?" she asked softly. Lucas nodded, watching as she placed the flowers delicately on the grave. "Thank you," Layla whispered to the headstone, "for creating such a special family. I promise to help look after them, not as a substitute, but as someone who has learned that love has many different forms." They stood there in silence for a few more minutes, the snow beginning to fall again in soft flakes. When they finally got up to leave, Lucas felt as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Ready to go back?" Layla asked. "Yes," he replied, taking one last look at Sarah's grave. "It's time to start again. No lies, no masks, just us, exactly as we are." On the way back to the mansion, the sun continued to play among the clouds, creating patterns of light and shadow on the snow. Like life, Lucas thought, with its moments of light and darkness, but always moving, always changing, always offering a new chance to start again. The night of the school's Christmas performance came quicker than anyone at Blackwood Manor expected. Emma was in her bedroom, nervously adjusting the dark green dress that Martha had so carefully ironed. "May I come in?" Layla knocked softly on the ajar door. Emma nodded, still struggling with the ribbon that was supposed to be in her hair. Layla approached with a gentle smile, taking the ribbon from the girl's trembling hands. "Nervous? What if I get it wrong? If I forget the words?" Then you improvise," Layla replied, deftly fixing Emma's hair. "You know, when I did theater, I had a trick for dealing with nervousness." "Which one?" "I imagined that I was only singing for one person, someone special." Emma met Layla's gaze through the mirror. "You sang for Nathan?" "Yes." Layla smiled softly. "And today, you can sing to whoever your heart chooses." Lucas appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his dark suit. Ready? The school auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, and students squeezed into their seats, cameras in hand, ready to capture every moment. Emma peeked out from behind the curtains, her heart pounding. "Daddy," she called softly. "Mom used to say she could hear us when we sang, even from heaven. Do you think it's true?" Lucas knelt down beside her, adjusting a loose lock of her hair. "I'm sure it is, Princess. And I bet she's smiling right now." "And is Nathan listening too?" Emma asked Layla, who was standing nearby. "Of course he is," Layla replied, her voice breaking. "He's always loved Christmas music." Mrs. Henderson began to call the students to their positions. Emma hugged her father quickly and, before going to her place in the choir, surprised everyone by giving Layla a tight hug too. The lights dimmed, and the choir began to sing. Emma was in the front row, her clear, strong voice soaring with "Silent Night." Lucas and Layla, sitting side by side in the audience, watched with pride. In the middle of the song, something magical happened. Emma looked directly at them, a small smile on her lips, and began to make the gestures that Layla had taught her during her practices at home. They weren't the official gestures of the choir. They were special, just theirs. Lucas felt tears well up in his eyes as he realized that his daughter was singing not just for Sarah, but for all of them, for the family they had become, imperfect and different, but true. When the performance was over, Emma ran up to them, her eyes shining. "Did you see I didn't miss a note? You were amazing." Lucas hugged her. "Would Mom have liked it?" she asked softly. "She would have loved it," Layla replied sincerely, "just like we do." On the way home, the snow began to fall softly. Emma fell asleep in the back seat of the car, still wearing her green dress, a serene smile on her face. "You know," Lucas said quietly so as not to wake her, "I think I've finally understood what Sarah always said about love being like music." "What do you mean?" Layla asked. "It never really ends. It just changes tone, finds new arrangements, creates different harmonies, but the basic melody, love itself, is always there." Layla smiled, looking at Emma through the rearview mirror. "And sometimes," she added softly, "the best songs are the ones we don't plan to play." The Blackwood mansion welcomed them with its Christmas lights twinkling softly against the snow. Inside, the piano waited, no longer as a monument to the past, but as a symbol of new beginnings, of songs yet to be played, of stories yet to be told. Christmas Eve arrived at the Blackwood mansion wrapped in snow and expectation. The aroma of roasting turkey and freshly baked cookies filled every room, while Martha orchestrated the kitchen with her usual efficiency. Emma woke up early, rushing downstairs in her pajamas. She found Layla at the piano, softly playing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." "Merry Christmas Eve," she exclaimed, throwing herself onto the stool next to Layla. "Merry Christmas Eve, darling," Layla smiled, stopping playing to make room for Emma. "Do you want to try that song we were practicing?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, positioning her fingers on the keys. The first notes of "Silent Night" flowed hesitantly but determinedly. Lucas watched from the doorway, cup of coffee in hand, amazed at the transformation a few weeks had brought. Since the presentation at school, something had changed, as if the truth, once exposed, had allowed everyone to breathe more freely. "Mr. Blackwood," Martha called out quietly, "the presents are all arranged under the tree." "Thank you, Martha. And please stay for supper tonight. Your family, too." The housekeeper smiled, touched. "It would be an honor, sir." In the afternoon, as the snow fell softly outside, everyone gathered in the living room. Emma was helping Layla hang the last decorations on the tree when she suddenly stopped. "Wait," she exclaimed, running up the stairs. She returned moments later carrying something in her hands, the crystal angel that had belonged to Sarah. "Can we put it on?" she asked, looking first at her father, then at Layla. "Of course, Princess," Lucas replied, his voice breaking. Emma turned to Layla. "Will you help me catch up?" Layla took Emma in her arms, lifting her to the top of the tree. The crystal angel caught the late afternoon light, sending little dancing rainbows across the room. "Perfect," Emma declared with satisfaction. Then, to everyone's surprise, she added, "Now Mom and Nathan can see us better from up there." Lucas and Layla exchanged an emotional look. Martha discreetly wiped away a tear. In the evening, after supper, everyone gathered around the piano. Emma insisted on playing first, performing Silent Night with only a few minor mistakes. Then it was Layla's turn, who played a melody that no one recognized. "It's beautiful," Emma commented. "What song is that?" "It's one I'm writing," Layla replied softly. "I started it with Nathan, and now I'm finally getting around to finishing it." "What's it called?" Lucas asked. Layla smiled, her hand still on the keys. "New Beginnings." Later, when Emma was already in bed, Lucas found Layla in the library, looking out of the window at the snow that continued to fall. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For helping us find music again. In every way." Layla turned to him, her honey-colored eyes shining in the light of the Christmas decorations. "You know, when I took this job, I thought I was here to help you, but actually, you've helped me just as much." Outside, the snow continued to fall silently, covering the world in its purity. Inside the Blackwood mansion, the piano awaited the dawn, ready to play new melodies, tell new stories, celebrate new beginnings. And somewhere far above the snow clouds, a crystal angel shone, guarding a family that had learned that love, like music, never really dies. It just finds new ways of being played. If you were in Emma's shoes, would you be able to forgive her father and Layla's initial lie, recognizing that something true was born out of this situation? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.